It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, man, good morning to you. Welcome into the Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-America Network. It is the day that we've looked forward to all week long after the longest week so far of 2018. It was a bit of a struggle to get there, but we made it. It is a Friday. Happy Free For All Friday. It's the day we get to look forward to where you get to set the discussion. Whatever's on your mind, bothering you, troubling you, let's have a little chat about it, shall we? It's a free-for-all. Let's do it. All right. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, I'd love to hear from you today. Whatever's on your mind, you can do so. Shoot me a message all over social media on Facebook, the Voice of Reason page, the KQAM page, the Facebook Live feed that's rolling right now, along with Twitter at Hoosier Reason. I'm starting to understand why we have such a hard time putting faith in human beings. It's very unfortunate. As we talk about issues on the show, whether it's political, whether it's non-political, whether it's fun, whether it's hard-hitting, whether it's serious, no matter what we do, it's sad that we have these situations sometimes to where people just do whatever they can. And I don't know if it's human nature. I would like to think that we were better people sometimes. I don't know if it's because that we have gotten away with so much already that we try and just push that barrier little by little. The progressives love to do this all the time, get away with what we can, continue to try and push the barrier, see how far we can get. I try to relate them to the young child that tries to push the boundaries just a little bit, just to see what kind of reaction they're going to get from their parents. This is the world that we live in now. This is the world that we live in. Just because someone may be a sweet old couple does not mean that maybe they have the best intentions. And I'm not talking about any of our listeners by any means. If you remember, during Christmas time, we had the story of the 80-year-old couple that was driving from California to Vermont and got stopped in Nebraska with, 60 pounds of marijuana. And they got caught, they got busted, it got confiscated, they got in trouble a little bit, put a little smack on the hand. But then, being that they were just, the old sweet little elderly grandparents, we didn't want to do anything for them, so we let them go, and that was that. And that was about it. I don't know if they got a fine or what they ended up doing. The news came out just a couple of days ago to where they got caught again trying to transport more marijuana for a second time. At what point do we just say, you have bad intentions and we're not going to allow you to do that anymore? Traveling from state to state. Now, regardless of what you believe in marijuana, which I don't want to get into that conversation, there are differences in state laws between some states that allow it and some states that don't. And if you're traveling through a state that does not allow that type of product in their state, then you're going to get in trouble. And how many times do you need to get in trouble before they start saying, wait a second, you may not be like the sweet person that we thought you may be? Here's the other story for you. This was out of California, as of course, it's the Californians that try these things. While the rest of us were debating on where to abandon our trees after Christmas, now a woman reportedly came back to Costco where she purchased her Christmas tree after it was dead and said that she tried to return the Christmas tree. Trying to return the Christmas tree after it was dead, after I used it, it died. How dare it die? You're not supposed to buy, sell me a live Christmas tree that dies. I can't believe it died. I am returning the Christmas tree back to you. And you know what? Costco gave her the refund. I cannot make these things up. And the story says that even one of the workers of Costco wrote, I cannot make this stuff up. Woman in line at Costco, totally nonchalant to return her Christmas tree because it was dead on January 4th. Amazingly, she actually got her money back, according to the Post, but not without a little bit of shaming from the store and other customers. So something to keep in mind for next year if your Christmas tree is dead after being chopped down a month before, you can make you may be able to go and get a refund. This is why, and maybe this is either the byproduct or the reason of that we have rules in society now to where we have laws on every little specific thing. Why we have disclaimers on every little specific thing. Red Bull does not actually give you wings, just so you know. Yes, they've been tried to be sued by individuals saying that I drank Red Bull and the commercial said that it would give me wings, and I do not have wings after I drank Red Bull. I am now suing you for false advertising. Why we have disclaimers that says may be hot, eat with caution, or may be hot, hold with caution, or here's a cup holder because it may be really, really hot, or it goes on and on and on. This is why we have a world full of litigation and lawyers eat it up. And either it's because, and now we're going to have to put on, and I guarantee you will see it next year in the major outlets and many in other places as well, maybe even the locally owned farm places for Christmas trees, where you will have signs that say no refunds or no returning of dead trees or no returning of trees after Christmas. Why? Because now we have to do that. How much money, if everybody went back to Costco and tried to return their Christmas tree, do you think Costco would lose on that? For you to essentially get a free Christmas tree, that we don't use common sense anymore. And if you've seen instances like this, I'd love to hear from you at 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. It makes me sad because we're on a road to do really great things in the state, in the region, in the community, to start getting back to the basics, getting back to common sense. But if we have to step back and we say, wait a second, we have to fight the fact that even someone's trying to return their dead Christmas tree on January 4th after Christmas, we have serious issues. We have serious problems. If we have the 80-year-old grandparents that are, or great-grandparents or whatever they may be at that time that are traveling across country with multiple tens of pounds of marijuana when they know it's illegal and they know it's wrong, whether we believe in the legalization or not, the fact is it is still illegal in some states. And if you get caught with it, especially if you get caught with multiple pounds of marijuana numerous times, you're going to get in trouble. If you have to have the disclaimer that says, don't eat the Hot Pocket because it's too damn hot, we have a problem. I'm really concerned about how society is moving towards this direction, because if we do not know how to fix it on a basic level and we can't live in a commonsensical world, we're never going to be able to take it to the next level and actually address serious issues within the government, where they do have smart individuals that manipulate us on the basic level every single day, because we're too stupid to realize that once your Christmas tree's dead after Christmas, then you do not return it to the store, you burn it, or you put it in a slash pile, or you shred it and you get the nice little bits afterwards to be able to spread out on your lawn or whatever you end up doing with it. But to return it to the store, to continue to sell the marijuana, we didn't get in trouble that time, so I guess we better try it again. We're going to try. I remember I was working at the rock radio station out in Colorado Springs, and around the holidays time, I don't remember what they called it, but they would work with the local grocery stores, and they would bag up like a Thanksgiving dinner, and it was around Thanksgiving holiday, and they would bag up a Thanksgiving dinner with a turkey and with some canned yams and with some stuffing and with some potatoes and with some cans of corn and whatever, and the listeners could go to the grocery store and purchase it for $9.43, because the station's frequency was 94.3. So it was $9.43. And we would be out in front of the store and handing out the flyer saying, hey, while you're in there at the cash register, when you're checking out, all you got to do is say that you want to purchase this, and then they'll give us one of the bags and we can put it in the big truck, and then we'll take it to the donation place wherever we're going to drop it off. And people were coming up to us while we were having this, and we would have the big bags already in a cart at the front door ready for us. And all they would do, we would have people literally come up and say, can we have it? We're one of the poor ones. Can we have this too? And try and take it out of our bag instead of actually purchasing one and donating it, or being on the list of the organization that's going to donate it. And people, I've noticed people try and get away with whatever they can. They try and take advantage of the situation when the opportunity presents itself. And I don't know, again, whether it's because of society, that's the way society is, that's human nature, and that's just our motive, is to try and get away with as much as we can, cut as many corners as we possibly can, or whether it's because we've been trained to do that in society because we've gotten away with so much. because there were a few that did like to use that, and they got away with it, so other people try to follow their steps, because it is human nature to try and cut the corner to go from point A to point B in the smallest amount of fashion. Remember, what's the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. And you're going to try and make that line as straight as you possibly can and as short as you possibly can, because people want to try and get as much wealth, as much prosperity, as much success, as much gain as they can with the least amount of effort. And if it's going to cost us in the sense of our morality, our standards, our ethics, our laws, then maybe we need to this is the importance of why we have something like law enforcement, why we have something like a code of standard or a rule of law or a set norm in society. And then you have progressives that just try and overturn the tables because they don't like the rule of law. They don't like set standards. They don't like the norm, because they're the ones that go out and question on why we have laws in the first place, why we have a norm in the first place. Let's question that. Let's shake it up. Let's be the oddballs out and then be hyped up as the courageous ones because we have a norm that needs to be broken. We need to break that mold of society, right? Then we get stuff like this. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but if you've seen these instances, or if you know what I'm talking, maybe I'm just talking out of my you-know-what, and maybe it's just the finite, minute instances, but I'm starting to see a trend. And unfortunately, government is not supposed to be there to create law after law after law for protected classes or to regulate the minuscule things that we do in life. But unfortunately, right now, if we don't have those, it looks like people try to abuse it just because they have the opportunity to do so. It's a free-for-all Friday. Lots to get to today. Stay here. This is The Voice of Reason.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason on the Mid-American Network.
Back into the Voice of Reason. Happy Friday to you. Finally made it. The day you've looked forward to all week long. The light has finally hit the end of the tunnel. We are here. I don't know if you watch Walking Dead, but it reminds me of the tunnel. What was it? The few episodes back in season 4 or 5 when they're walking through the tunnel and they're stuck in the tunnel for about 3 days and they finally see the end of it and car pulls right up right as they're walking out. It's beautiful timing. It's a beautiful thing. You see the light at the end of the tunnel. You finally made it through. You killed all the zombies. You suffered through the darkness of the week of work, and now you get to benefit from it on the back end. 316-721-8255, 316-721. Having a little fun today on a Friday as we talk about whatever is on your mind. And I'm seeing story after story after story. By the way, at the bottom of the hour, we're going to talk with Phil Kerpen, with the president of American Commitment. We talked to him with him yesterday on the show. We're going to replay that interview talking about tax reform at the federal level and all the benefits that we've been seeing. And I've been seeing stories and news headlines over and over and over, all over the place, all over the country, about the bonuses that different businesses want to give to their employees, the salary increases that they want to give to their employees, the minimum wage increases that many of them are doing by choice because they want to maintain. Remember, real reform, and this is why I harp on the union so much, and if you're a union worker, then I apologize because I've never been a fan of the unions, and if you have a different theory, then you're more than welcome to chime in to discuss it. But the reason that unions to me have been more of a negative aspect than a positive aspect is because unionism, along with that mentality of raising minimum wage through government bureaucrats and regulation, throws off the market, throws off the private market. You can live on the lower wages if the market was actually set with free marketism, and then we would have lower living costs, so everybody would be happy. But the fact that we have inflation and the fact that government raises prices and the fact that government tries to raise a minimum wage and then tries to throw the wrenches in the nice little system. It's like a watch. You remember the nice little tiny cogs, hundreds of tiny little cogs that used to work, and how they also used to work together, and they have to work in unison in order to make the clock work and the nice little watch work, and everything had to work in unison. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful masterpiece of how it all was supposed to work. Nowadays it's digital, so we don't even have to worry about that. But before, back in the day, that's how it used to work. Now imagine that system, and then all of a sudden you start throwing in some grease, and you start throwing in some other little nuts and bolts, and you start throwing in this or that, and it doesn't work the way it's supposed to, because that's what the government does when it abuses its power and affects the market. Because now we're seeing tax cuts for businesses along with individuals, and the individuals are getting the benefits from the income tax breaks that they're getting, along with getting a tax break from the businesses, so they may get some more perks or bonuses or wage increases from their business, or even just a bonus. They're getting the decrease in their eventually, a lot of them are going to be getting decreases. We are here locally getting decreases in our utilities, because the utility companies are going to be making more of a profit, and there's the rules to cap their profits so they can't gouge us with crazy prices of utilities when they're raking in the money. So we're going to see potentially rates going down for utility companies as well. All across the board, we're seeing these benefits. I just saw the story today from the Sentinel about the Lawrence Paper Company up in Lawrence issuing $500 bonuses because they're getting the benefits, and they're going to be giving bonuses to all of their employees. $500. Not huge, not life-changing, but it's still nice. Then on the other side of the coin, we're seeing the argument to continue to raise minimum wage, the standard for the minimum wage by government regulation. And we're starting to see the negative effects from that. So compare the two. We have one side where we're giving tax incentives and tax breaks to individuals and businesses, and we're seeing more bonuses, we're seeing more tax, or we're seeing more wage increases. We're seeing more benefit. We're seeing the people happier. We're seeing them work harder. We're seeing the businesses flourish. We're seeing them grow and do well. Then on the other side of the coin, we see government wanting to impose and overbear its will onto the businesses and wanting to force them to raise minimum wage. And what's happening there, according to the New York Post, Red Robin. The restaurant Red Robin will be offsetting the minimum wage hike mandates to them by canning the bus boys. So the nice little work on the side to make some money, or maybe I'm young and trying to just make a little bit of money before I go off to college. Sorry, no opportunity for you to do so anymore, because we're going to get rid of bus boys, because that could potentially be saving the company $8 million over the next year. Here's another one for you. Employees at nearly a dozen Tim Hortons outlets across Ontario, Canada, tell CBS News that they're facing losses of paid breaks, benefits, and perks by franchise owners because of the minimum wage increases. When you force the company to do something in the mindset of trying to help the employee, because that's all it's about, right? It's only about the employee trying to take care. Yeah, right. When you do it in mind of the employee and you start imposing your will as government bureaucrats onto the businesses, there's going to be repercussions, and it's going to harm more than help. When you give the incentive and you give the tax breaks and everybody flourishes and does well, then you see the benefits of actually allowing that to happen, and you see the benefit from the company and from the individual and everything around the individual. It's funny that when you give them the carrot for the good stuff, things happen good, and when you try to impose government bureaucrats and government regulation, the government will, then it's not so good. It's interesting how that works, doesn't it? But yet the progressives still have not figured that out, because they'd rather create the government legislation and government regulation and control over the private sector while calling us the fascists. That really works, right?
Wake me up inside. I can't wake up. Wake me up inside. Call my name and save me from the dark. Wake me up. Bid my blood to run. I can't wake up before I come undone. Save me from the nothing I've become.
Your home for entertaining radio.
This is your fault, too, man. I keep missing Rush Limbaugh's morning update every morning because I'm listening to your show.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Oh, yeah. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. It's a free-for-all Friday. Having a little fun today. We do want to talk about a few important issues, but we'll also have a little fun today as well. It's open lines to you on whatever you want to talk about. 316 721-8255, 316-721-TALK. I do want to play an interview that we had yesterday. His name is Phil Kirpin. He is the president of American Commitment. You can check him out, americancommitment.org. We'll play that here in just a minute with his take on how the tax reform process went at the federal level and what's to come when it comes to federal legislation. But first, let's go right to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Scott.
Good morning, Scott. How are you, sir?
Well, you talk about unions, but you need to talk about the police union because they're protecting police who commit crimes, and instead of getting arrested, they just get time off with paid leave. And I think the city did a bad deal, just like Trump's talking about the United States did a bad deal selling their embassy. Wichita City Council and Mayor did a bad deal with dealing with this police union. They need to redo their contract because something's not right when you're letting cops get off after they commit crimes, not going to jail, but just getting time off with leave. That don't make any sense.
Well, is that after the investigation or is that during the investigation? Because I'm for the fact of them either going on leave or, being put on pause during an investigation. Then once the investigation pans out and we come to a decision of right, wrong, or justified, non-justified, whatever the courts end up saying, then we go into a punishment mode. I mean, would you agree with that kind of process?
Well, what I'm saying is that when you're charged, then something's supposed to happen. Not you get paid leave.
Well, and
You're
I think sure, and I think there's a difference between, certain situations, obviously, in certain circumstances would result in different ones, whether it's a paid leave or an unpaid leave. I do support the idea of the officers being involved in something that is under investigation, stepping away from being in active duty, so to speak, until the investigation's done, and then we go towards a punishment of a fine or imprisonment or being kicked out the force or being justified and not having to do anything.
About going to jail.
Again, depending on the situation. There's a lot of situations that arise all over the country, depending on different things that happen.
Talking about Wichita.
In Wichita too. I know that there's been a few different incidences over the last year that have been somewhat questionable to many individuals, and depending on how the investigations pan out, then you're right. If there's legitimately something of an issue, then you're right. I'm all for punishing an individual whether they wear a badge or not, if they've done something wrong like that. So just the question that I had asked you was, during the investigation, should we punish or should we wait for the punishment until after the investigation?
Well, I know these unions are the ones that I think the city and the city council needs to do something with their negotiation with the unions, because the unions are, I understand they work for their people, but, sometimes unions can be a bad thing. In this case, they are.
Well, and I'm right there with you. I'm not for or a big fan of any really type of union. So, Scott, I appreciate it. It's a good point. When we talk about unions, there are more than just labor unions, and that's one of them that could be revisited to try and rework how they operate. So I appreciate that very much. 316-721-8255. Let's go back to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
This is Pete.
What's going on, Pete? How are you?
I'm doing well. Good Friday to you.
Happy Friday.
Exactly. In reference to your previous caller, I've just got two words for him. Now, I understand his sentiment, and you can look across the country. There's a lot of cops that do a lot of bad things, and they seem to get away with it. But if a cop does something wrong, should he be, in fact, punished before he's convicted? And the two words I would say to your friend Scott is due process.
Right, and that's the point that I was making, is during the investigation, whether it's a paid leave or an unpaid leave, depending on the seriousness of the situation, a leave is absolutely necessary, and then we look to see, depending on after the due process, once the investigation's done, once the courts make their decision, whether it was maybe a justified shooting or whatever the case was, then we go into punishment mode, and I'm not against punishment mode for either person with a badge or not without a badge, but we need to make sure that it is through the courts of the due process. The unions in that aspect, if we want to throw the unions into that measure, their duty is to protect the quote-unquote people that they represent, so they're going to go out and advocate for the protection of them to some degree, but that's only going to help so far for so long as well.
Well, should the unions be protecting the person, or should they be protecting the truth?
Well, exactly, and that's what they should be doing, but it's a union, which is why I'm not a big fan of unions.
Well, exactly. I'm with you there, but I think on the other side too, if a cop does something wrong and gets put on unpaid administrative leave and he's found guilty, then he ought to be forced to repay that administrative leave.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, if you're going to be on the paid leave and you get in trouble and you end up getting into trouble the way that you are, then yeah, you should not only pay back the leave, but then you're possibly leaving the force and possible jail time or whatever the due process and the courts end up saying that you need to do in the end of that. So you're right. When we hold people accountable, and you know, look, I love Scott's passion with the issue because I know he calls in about the issue a lot, and I love the passion about it because we do want to hold our entire community responsible and accountable for their actions, including law enforcement. I am a huge advocate and supporter of law enforcement. But just like any other group, just like any other individual, there are flaws and there are individuals with bad intentions. And if we do find one of those, then we need to punish them. Now, I think that there needs to be a different type of punishment between someone that goes out with a bad intention and wants to cause harm or wants to abuse that power that they have, or someone that was more reactionary and did it as an accident. Should they still get in trouble? Yeah, maybe. We should still have them get in trouble, but nearly not as much as someone who went out there with that intent to want to abuse their power.
Well, I think given the nature of law enforcement's position in our society, the punishment for committing offenses, because there is much more expected of them because of their position. Therefore, I think the punishment, if anything, should be more severe.
Sure. Well, that's
given their position in society.
Exactly. I mean, the position, the rule of law that they're supposed to uphold and what they're supposed to be doing. You're right. If they end up failing to that, then, you know, we need to hold them to that standard. Pete, I appreciate it. I love the call. Happy New Year too, my friend. Been a little bit since we chatted. So that was, it's a good point. It's a really good point. We have law enforcement. The purpose of law enforcement is to uphold the rule of law. And if there's an individual in law enforcement that does not uphold the rule of law, then are they up to the task of doing the position that they were intended and assigned to be doing? And I am the biggest advocate of law enforcement, military personnel, emergency responders. That's what I support very much so because I understand the importance of it. But again, there are human beings. Human beings have flaws. Human beings have faults, and we need to find those faults and try and limit them and minimize them as much as we possibly can, especially if they're going to be wearing a uniform and a badge representing us and doing what society wants and needs them to be doing. Let's go back to the phones again, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Justin.
Hey, what's going on, my friend?
Hey, I got 2 quick points I'll get out of your way. First one referencing Scott, the caller. I missed the first chunk of what he was having to say there, but the bigger point I want to make is that, you know, these folks all over town are calling in or complaining at work or whatever that there's all these cops running rampant doing whatever they want. That's simply not the case. There was all over the news the last 2 days that 2 cops from WPD have both been adjudicated. One was charged with a felony for domestic abuse within the last week. I forget what the charges were on the second officer. They were both found guilty.
Sure.
So you can't sit over there and tell me that these unions are running amok and the cops are running amok and everybody's protecting everybody and it's a corrupt system. It's simply not true. Both those cops were on unpaid administrative leave during their process of their proceedings.
Sure.
So it's not like they're sitting at home getting paid. You know, they're not getting anything. And the second point is, I almost agree with you 95% of the time when they're about unions. You know, there's too many unions, too much unions going on. Everybody's got a union they report to, and they're all protected.
Sure.
I think it's gotten out of hand. However, there are agencies and professions where those are still important. And I think it's law enforcement, EMTs, firefighters. Those guys need somebody to have their backs. So in situations like this, you don't get a municipality that's all stacked against them and they get shit canned and get thrown off the force and their whole life and career is ruined over something that may not have been their fault. So
that's a good point.
That's all I got.
Hey, no, I agree with you, Justin. I appreciate the call very much, my friend. No, it's a great point. You're right. I mean, we are seeing, I feel for the most part, 99% of the time, we are seeing due process come into play. I mean, you're right. The 2 examples of right now, domestic abuse, someone was, they're not, just because they wear the badge does not mean they get away with certain things in society and they get to speed when they're not actually on duty or when they're doing something they're not getting to sell drugs on the side. I mean, we hear about inner city police officers, which I haven't really heard about any here in our area, but in other states and bigger cities where the drugs are being distributed through law enforcement behind the scenes and off duty and sort of thing, or domestic abuse in these cases. And when we do see these, they do get punished just like anybody else, because when they don't wear their uniform, they're a regular citizen just like anybody else. And if they break the law, they're going to get in trouble just like anybody else. So I completely agree. That's a perfect example. Unpaid leave. Due process came through. They got kicked off the force. They're getting in trouble because of domestic abuse. That's not okay. And now they're going to be serving with the other people that they've probably put in prison themselves because of an incidents like that. So I can see your reasoning, especially with the unions for firefighters, law enforcement, because they get taken advantage of a lot. And if anybody does need it, then sure. I could look. I'm not completely against unions. I understand the need for them on occasion, but a lot of times, especially in the private sector and primarily with the unions that I've been around, the auto unions or the labor unions, they have really abused their power and forgotten what they're actually there to represent, which is the problem that I have. But there are needs for some still, and I know the intent of them back in the day, that many of them don't necessarily need anymore, but they're still needed in some areas and some specific reasons. So great points. I appreciate that, Justin. 721-825-5316-721-TALK. Didn't get a chance to play the interview. That's all right. It's a free-for-all Friday, so I'm glad we had the conversation as we move along with trying to make our community a better place, and law enforcement's one way to do that. Again, I respect law enforcement 110% as the idea of what law enforcement is. It's kind of like the American sovereignty, the American exceptionalism. I love America for what the reasoning of America is, what the intent of Americanism is. With a lot of people say that it's based on racism, built on the backs of slaves, built on the backs of the quote unquote slaves of corporations and the evil corporations running the country, and they hate the country. We have faults. We've had issues in the nation. Not going to run away from them or hide from them or pretend they didn't exist. Yes, we had them, but we're still the greatest nation on the face of the earth, and I still believe in American exceptionalism and nationalism in the intent of what nationalism is supposed to be, because I still love America.
Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Mid-America Network.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-America Network. By the way, speaking of law enforcement, just to wrap up that conversation, do you remember back when the Black Lives Matter movement started, first off, about a couple of years ago, and there was a panel discussion, I believe it was on Fox, maybe CNN, I don't remember, but someone asked one of the activists, one of the heads of that, on their thoughts on law enforcement, and they said that we don't need law enforcement at all, that we'll hold our own community accountable for our own actions, and we don't need law enforcement. And obviously, with the stories that we use at the beginning of the show, with the lady that tries to return the Costco Christmas tree that's dead on January 4th and gets a reimbursement on that, and with the way that we have crime and drugs and human trafficking and everything of the sort traveling and running rampant, even with law enforcement, it'd be very difficult to hold our very own community accountable, because sometimes we just let things run under the rug and we just don't think about it at all. So the need for law enforcement is there. And should we hold them accountable? Obviously, yes, we do. But there is an absolute need for them, and we respect them every single day for what they do. This portion of the Voice of Reason brought to you by the Inman Harvest Cafe. It's not just a Friday. It's not just a free-for-all Friday, but it's also your Fried Chicken Friday. And I know just thinking about it at 6 a.m. makes you hungry. I get hungry every Friday morning thinking about this and talking about it because it sounds so good. So this is your perfect opportunity to head up to Inman, just north of Hutchinson, and be able to get yourself some Fried Chicken Friday on the buffets that happen lunchtime, dinner time at the Inman Harvest Cafe. Katie's on the line with us this morning. Katie, how are you today?
Good morning, Andy. Happy Fried Chicken Friday.
Happy Fried Chicken Friday. It's another one, the second one of 2018, which means it's just that much more exciting and special. What do you have on the slate for us today?
Well, today we are going to have chicken and wild rice casserole. And this is one of the few casseroles that we do that does not have cheese in it. It's shocking, I know, but it's really good without it. It does have a chicken broth saucy stuff that goes on it, and it's got some mushrooms in it, wild rice and chicken, and it's really good. You could potentially put cheese on it, like if you wanted to trot yourself on over to the salad bar and put a few scoops of cheese on top of it. You could do that if you're like a cheeseaholic like me, but the recipe itself doesn't have any cheese in it, so we're having that.
At least there's an opportunity to put the cheese on it, because you're right. I don't know many things that come out of the kitchen there that does not have cheese involved in it in some way, shape, or form.
Right. Well, let me tell you. So because we're not putting cheese on that one, we have to overcompensate, right? so we're gonna have cheese enchiladas, which is like all cheese.
I love it. So that way you can have the double cheese.
Yeah. So you got your tortilla, and you got our homemade enchilada sauce, and then you've got cheese.
That's fantastic. That's the perfect way to do it there with the cheese enchilada.
And I don't know what it would taste like, but I'm a big fan of big gloppy mess. So you could put the rice on your plate, and then you could put a cheese enchilada on top of that and see what that's like.
That's probably what I would end up doing. I'm right there with you. I like the idea of just piling everything together and then just being able to eat it all at the same time and getting the benefits of all of it all at once. So that is
that's
beautiful.
what I do.
I love it. Now you have the buffet from 11 to 1 today, the big buffet from 5 to 8 o'clock tonight, and the 5 to 8 tonight buffet, you get the free slice of pie. Any idea what the pies are going to look like today?
The pies, we've got coconut with meringue on it. We've got sour cream raisin. We've got peanut butter. We've got rhubarb, custard, and then we'll probably be making a banana. We make a banana split, and chocolate chip cookie dough pie. That's a new one. We're kind of experimenting. January is a good time to try new things, and so we're experimenting with a chocolate chip cookie dough pie.
That sounds fantastic. I still have to try the rhubarb pie. I've yet to try that, and it sounds so good.
Yeah, next time you're headed this direction, let us know, and we'll bake one real quick.
Yeah, well, if I do that, I'm gonna have to do that. But what was it? The bumble pie or whatever? Where's the rhubarb and all the berries? Yeah, the bumbleberry. That sounds delicious. There.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Oh, I love it. It's the Inman Harvest Cafe. It's the Fried Chicken Friday. It is the buffets at lunchtime, at dinner time today, the free slice of pie in the evening. It's going to be a blast. I know your stomachs are already rumbling for the day. And Katie, you guys enjoy. Keep on cooking. We'll check in with you here in a couple hours.
All right, that sounds good. We'll talk to you then.
Always a great time. That's the Inman Harvest Cafe, just north of Hutchinson up there. Katie, we appreciate that very much. We love having them sponsor part of the Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-America Network. Wrapping up hour number 1, everybody on the western part of the state and beyond. Have a great weekend. Everybody here in Wichita, stay tuned. 2 more hours coming your way. Lots to get to today. It's a free-for-all Friday, so it's all up to you to decide the topics for the day. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is the Voice of Reason on the Mid-America Network.
It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
To you. Welcome into the Voice of Reason, hour number 2 of the Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. It is the day we've looked forward to all week long. It is trenching through the dark tunnels all week as we've gone through the longest week so far of 2018. But ladies and gentlemen, you've made it. It's finally here. We've enjoyed it. We've prospered. We've utilized every minute of every day that we possibly could. And now it's a Friday. Along with a Friday, it's whatever you want to talk about, bothering you, troubling you, discussing it. Let's do it. Let's work through it together because it's a free-for-all Friday. That's what we do. 721-8255, 721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, I'd love to hear from you today. Anything you want to talk about, something we've discussed, have not discussed yet this week. I know there's a lot that we have not discussed. I've tried to keep it as statewide as we possibly could with the first week of the legislative session, with a lot of state politics and issues happening, with a lot of drama happening in our legislature, with a lot of updates from the campaigns. We've tried to stay on that as much as we can because we have more control over that, first off, than we realize, second off, than we do at the federal level. So we try and focus on that. But if you want to talk anything federal, anything national, international even, you're more than welcome to do so. I want to hear from you. I do have a question that I think might be kind of an interesting topic. And it was brought up to me a couple of days ago. I was chatting with an individual, and the topic came up, and I started thinking about it, and it made a lot of sense, at least at the beginning. And I want to get your take on this. Since the beginning of the founding of many of these states, including the state of Kansas, which was in 1861, many of the states, obviously, as we grow in population, as we grow in industry, as we grow in jobs, as many people moving from one state to another, leaving one state, going into another state, and they're just moving all around. Our legislators, which, as we've talked about, the state governments are really supposed to be the most powerful governments in the country because of state sovereignty, because of the fact that the states should be making 90% of the decisions for our daily lives. If you want medical marijuana or recreational marijuana, that's up to the state, not to the federal government. If you want to be able to drive with a seatbelt or without a seatbelt, that's up to the state, not to the federal government. If you want to have public education, that's funded and taken care of and regulated by the state, not by the federal government. If you want to have environmental protection and you want to have the EPA, it should be a department of the state, not of the federal government. It's supposed to be the states that control this on the normal basis. And the question that I have is, as of lately, do you feel that you've had complete transparency, control, and oversight of your state government? Because we're supposed to, especially in a state where we have not even 3 million people as a population with 2 million individuals as registered voters. That should mean that we should have a very easy bit of transparency of being able to have oversight of our federal government, because we don't have a lot of people in the state of Kansas. And I see that as a good thing, because that's the reason why we live here, is because we want to be out in the country in agriculture, or we want to start growing our cities a little bit. But we still have, compared to other states, our population is very, very low. But yet, do we have a real good, solid say of our governmental policies and accountability from our legislatures? Because right now, I don't feel that we do. We have movements, as we've talked about ad nauseum lately, with the discussion of Medicaid expansion or education or more spending or more tax rates or whatever else they want to do at the federal level or at the state level. They're doing it. We're screaming here at the local level saying we want our money back on our own paycheck. What the hell are you doing? And they're not listening. Many of them are not listening. Some of them are. And our elections represent that. Our elections reflect who we're going to have representing us, who we're going to have in control in those seats, either in the House or in the Senate, in the governorship, in the lieutenant governorship, in the Supreme Court-ish. We don't have as much say on that one as we would like, and that's another discussion for a later time. But when we elect and nominate these individuals to go and represent us at the statewide level, we should have absolute transparency and discussion, so we could be knocking on their door. Hey, Mr. Senator, Mrs. Senator, Mr. or Mrs. Representative, I don't like what you were doing there. Let's change this up a little bit. Now, there is a difference between, again, the democracy, to where they just listen to the majority rules of the loudest voice, as compared to a constitutional republic, to where we elect them to represent us based on the platform that they told us they were going to uphold. And there is a big difference there. But at the same time, they can say it's easier when you have larger districts to say one thing and do another based on the special interest, based on the money, and based on a manipulated campaign, because not as many people are active, are engaged, and are listening to pay attention to what they have to say and what they want to do as compared to what they're actually doing. So the question I pose to you is it time for a little bit of a reform at the statewide level? Is it time to increase the number of legislators in our state government? Make the districts smaller, make more people, make each district a little bit smaller to have less people in the district, but have them have more of a voice, so it forces them to be a little bit more politically engaged. It forces them to pay attention just a little bit more in each district because their voice really does matter. Their vote really does matter, and they have an easier time getting a hold of their legislator. They have an easier time being able to hold them accountable. They have an easier time being able to repeal them if they don't like them, being able to get them out of office, voting in somebody else. Does it make it a little more difficult for the special interests to have control over over these legislators? Would it be beneficial to change the number of legislators in the House and in the Senate and increase that number while shrinking the districts to make them represent less people in one district? I want to hear from you on this. 721-825-5721-TALK. Just think about it for this second. As far as I'm aware, and I did a little basic research, I have not been able to find anything on the fact that the number of legislators has changed since the beginning of the state of Kansas in 1861. As far as I was able to see, that we've always had 125 House members, 40 state senators, and it's always been that way. At the time of the creation of the state of Kansas, we had 107,000 people as a population for the entire state. From the years 1990 to the year 2000, in a 10-year span, we went from 2.47 million to 2.68 million. Just over 200,000 people came into the state. Right now, we're currently sitting just over 2.9 million. Which went up another 300 some odd thousand. 2.9 million people. We continue to increase the population. They're going into certain districts, but we're not increasing the number of legislators in both chambers in order to represent them appropriately. All we're doing is cramming in the people into one district and then having them be part of that. And eventually, we're going to get to the part to where one representative or one senator is going to be representing 500,000 people. Is that the right way to go about it? Because do you really honestly get as much of a voice as what you should be at the state level? Does this really help the idea of republicanism? And not republicanism as the party, but as the governmental system. A constitutional republic, not a democracy, but a constitutional representing the people, running on a platform and having the people in your district vote on you to represent that platform. Is it a good idea to maybe shrink the districts a little bit? Now, the negative side that automatically comes up right off the bat would be the idea of the cost. We're going to be spending more money on the legislators and their benefits and salaries and everything else that goes along with it. That is a cost aspect to this. I don't think it would be, however, over dramatic if we actually started to hold ourselves accountable to our spending at the statewide level. If we started weaning off some of the fat, some of the extra spending that we could allot towards other legislators. But do you think it's time that we increase the number of legislators in both chambers in order to shrink the districts and make them a little more accountable to us so we can have a little bit louder voice in each of our districts? 721-825-5721-TALK. That's the question I posed to you on a Free-for-All Friday. Your thoughts on that? Or should we keep it the same? We just find other ways to try and hold them accountable, because remember, the state governments are more important than any other government. The Kansas government, the governor, the legislatures, the Supreme Court is more important to pay attention to than what's happening at the federal level. Original constitutionalism, the federal government should be nothing more than having a diplomat, being our U.S. senator or U.S. congressman or woman, to go up there and take care of international issues. That's not the case anymore, and we need to start weaning ourselves off that and getting back to it. But our main focus, our biggest ability for change, is to make changes at the statewide level. How can we go about that? 721-825-5721-TALK. This is the Voice of Reason on KQAM.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker KQAM.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker KQAM. It's an honor to have you along today on a Friday. Good morning to you, starting off your day, ending your day, however your day may pan out to be. We really appreciate you joining us on the show. We love having you tune in every single day. Hopefully, I can start you off the best way that we can. The question is, should we be expanding the number of delegates, quote unquote, in our state legislature to shrink the districts in order to make them be a little more accountable to the people and us as the people having a little bit louder voice? Anthony on Facebook mentions that right now, yes, it's a good idea, but right now we expect the president to fix what we as the states can do ourselves. And that's a great point. Absolutely great point. Sometimes we need to do this in baby steps, so maybe we need to start remembering and reprioritizing ourselves on what the duty of the president and the federal government is and what the duty of the governor and the legislature and the state government is. And if we're not going to allow the states to do their job, then what's the point of expanding more legislators in there? It's because right now we don't even give them the duties or the responsibility of what they're supposed to be having. And their duty to block the federal government from imposing federal regulation on many things, from them blocking certain things, because we're not supposed to be involved that much at the federal level. We're supposed to be focused on the states. Or should we just rearrange? I know every few years that we end up rearranging the districts to make it a little more fair, so that way, this based on population-wise of certain areas, that we reline the districts, we do a little gerrymandering, we start manipulating the districts, so that way we, number one, have a fair say, and it's a little bit easier for the elected official to get elected in those districts, because majoritively, they'll have individuals in that district with the same beliefs. And I see the need for that on occasion, but at the same time, when should we be saying, you know what? You went from representing 20,000 people to 500,000 people. How are all 500,000 of those people in your district going to be able to properly represent you and be able to give their input on your thoughts, or to understand your platform and vote on you the way they need to be voting on you? So therefore, we're going to start breaking it up and actually having you represent a smaller portion, which is really the way that it's supposed to be and intended. So interesting conversation. Let's go right to the phone, shall we? 721-8255-721-TALK. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, Andy. This is Ron.
Ron, what's going on, sir?
It's just another great day in Kansas.
Another day in paradise. That's right.
Right. Well, first of all, in the Kansas Constitution, Article 2, Section 2, under senators and representatives, it says, the number of representatives and senators shall be regulated by law.
Sure.
But shall not exceed 125 representatives and 40 senators. Well, the first thing you would have to do is to get that changed in the Constitution, and good luck with that.
Well, that is true. We have a hard time, for whatever reason, amending our Constitution. But, I mean, that brings up the perfect point. When that was ratified, when we created this Constitution, it was in 1861, when we had 107,000 people in the entire state. Now, I'm not for the quote-unquote living Constitution aspect, to where we change it whenever there's a new trend or fad. But when we go from 107,000 people to 2.9 million people, maybe there needs to be a little bit of a change in that sense, just to be able to have it a little more representative to us.
Well, the other thing is that we need to repeal the 17th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, and we need to bring the senators back under our control in this state, because Woodrow Wilson had a lot of problems of trying to get anything passed because they belong to each state legislators. So that's one way we can control it. And what we need an Article 5 Convention of States.
Absolutely.
You know, there's several ways. The big thing is that participation. That's what the biggest problem is in every state.
Well, that is very true.
People just don't want to get involved. Don't bother me. I don't want to. When I talk to people, I can't control that. Blah 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 blah.
Well, exactly, and doesn't that change that mindset a little bit if you say, all right, instead of your senator representing 50,000 people, but now they're going to represent 10,000 people, and that just narrowed the ratio down quite a bit, to where your voice, with how many inactive people there are, if you start actually becoming active and engaged and actually having your voice heard, that they're going to hear you very, very loud. I mean, wouldn't that change a lot of people's mindsets of, hey, now I do feel like I'm in somewhat control of the situation now?
Well, it would probably help, but we've got to get. It's just like I went over to West Elk at Howard the other day and listened to Chris Ann. We've got to understand how we came about, what happened in England all those 700 years that brought us to our Constitution.
Sure.
And what we had to do as as a people then when it was written, because like she said, all of the people that came over here and formed our country were British citizens.
Absolutely.
You know, so we've got to get the people of Kansas educated on what their rights are, so that they can demand them. And that's what we need to do.
That's a really good point. Ron, I appreciate that very much. You're absolutely right. And maybe that is a baby step that we have to do. Understand what our role is as a citizen, understand what our role is as a state government, understand what the role is of the federal government, and then we can start saying, okay, wait a second. What the intent of the roles are compared to what they are actually right now is a little bit different. How do we get that changed? We start getting engaged. How do we get engaged? We start having a louder voice. When we start having a louder voice, maybe we can start doing something about it. So that's a really good point, Ron. I appreciate that. Let's go back to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
This is Sean.
Sean, what's going on, my friend?
Well, it's a happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you, yeah.
Well, isn't living in a representative republic just wonderful?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that we get to have these discussions. But here's my thought. Do we really want more politicians running the show? I mean, is that really... And I'm not trying to slam politicians.
Oh, come on. It's easy to slam politics. We can do that. That's a good time.
That's too easy. the problem is much harder. But anyway, do we really want to muck up the water? You get three people in a room, you can't get all three of them to agree on anything.
Sure.
Now you want to, right now we have 100 and whatever it is, 125, in that same room.
Sure.
And they can't agree. Now we want to increase that number and have even more. I mean, I think what we need to do is worry more about the gerrymandering, and the redistricting and all that stuff, and be a little more. I know it's a political process, and it's going to have its bias to the party that's in power. That's just natural, and I'm not. It goes both ways. When the Republicans are in control and Democrats are in control, or
sure. Well, let me ask you this, because sure, we got about 45 seconds left. So let me ask you this real quick with that, because you're right. I see the positives and the negatives of having more politicians in government. That can kind of muddy it up a little bit more and lead to potentially more corruption. At the same time, we can have a little bit louder voice with smaller districts. But if we do that, would you agree with the fact that when we have more politicians and they do bicker more so, that government gridlock and them not passing things is potentially a better thing to kind of slow the process rather than trying to ram through more regulations on us?
Well, while in a perfect world, yeah, that sounds great. But, when you got to get things done, they need to get done. And when you muck up the water like that, then they stop getting the real things done. I think that we need to be more worried about the redistricting according to whether you're rural, urban, and qualities and customs of the particular area.
Gotcha. I appreciate the call, my friend, very much. So we'll take a bottom of the hour break. Got some more calls on the line. Plus, Dale from Wichita RV and Outdoor Show swinging by in the next segment. Stay tuned.
Patriotism is alive and well. The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker KQAM. We love having you along today. Appreciate you checking out the show as you're starting off your day, thinking a little bit. That's what we love doing. 721-8255-721-TALK. Dale with Wichita RV here in studio. Before we get to him, though, I want to take one more phone call on it. We're going to continue this topic after as well, because it's a fascinating topic on whether we should be expanding the number of legislators. The positives and negatives. Negative, it's going to cost us more as a state, and we're going to have more politicians. The good news, maybe it shrinks the district's size a little bit population-wise, and we can have a little more accountability. Again, we've had the same number of legislators in the House and the Senate when the state was created with 107,000 people in the state. Now we have almost 3 million. Can they properly represent us the best way with the number that we currently have? Let's take one more phone call before we shift gears here for a second. Good morning. What's your name?
This is Jim.
Jim, what's going on, sir?
Oh, I'm just amazed about things. I'd like to know what's bugging Scott beforehand. But on the subject of the legislators, what do we get? 15, 20% is a good voter turnout? Until we get voters turning out in 80 and 90%, we have plenty of legislators. The problem is people don't pay any attention to politics except for the one day before the election.
Well, again,
in
and
which
that's
case they'd look at people's hairstyle.
well, that's true, and that's the question. I mean, if we had a smaller district with less people in that district, would that all of a sudden make them think, for the ones that say, I don't really care, I don't have a voice anyways, it doesn't matter, to say, wait a second, now instead of me competing with 500,000 other people, now I'm only competing with 10,000 people, which means my vote really does matter a heck of a lot more than it used to. I'm going to start getting somewhat active again. Would that help the process?
I don't think so. I think people would say, well, there's only 3 people in my district, and so it doesn't matter.
Okay.
You know, I think that the answer is that we have had government-run schools which have been training people since the 1950s to be good subjects,
Sure.
to be slave workers, to go to work at 9 o'clock and come home at 5, and we haven't been teaching people to be politically active.
Sure. Well,
you know, I'm sure you hear it on your call-in program. Very few people actually understand what's going on.
Well, I would say that our listeners are very informed that they know what's going on because, well, I mean, we're engaged and we're informed and we're activists. But I get your point very much so, Jim. I appreciate that. You're right. There are a lot of people that base their entire vote based on the last 30-second campaign ad they saw that looked really pretty, and the person looked nice and shiny and sparkly teeth and the glowing eyes and the wavy hair, and that's what they voted on. And they heard one little campaign talking point with a 130-character tweet, and that's their entire platform, and that's what they're going to stand for, and that's what they believe in. And politics has become very difficult in that sense. So it's a great conversation. I want to continue it on a little bit later, but if you remember, just a few days ago, we kicked off the Wichita RV and Outdoor Show, and it seems to be doing really well. Yesterday, a little cold, but you need to get out and see it because if you're cold and you're outside, that's kind of a reason to go check out an RV. Dale's here with us. Good morning. How are you, my friend?
Good morning. How are you?
Hold on here. Helps if I actually hit the button. There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we go. Hey, great to have you back in here. How's it been the last couple of days?
It's been good. We've had a good turnout so far. Yesterday was a little slow. A few people even were calling in and say, "Oh, we're not going to make it," but we'll be out this weekend
Sure.
due to the roads. But we've had a good turnout. We're excited.
Very good. It started off on Wednesday. You're going through Sunday. Sunday at 5 o'clock, I believe, correct?
Sunday at 5 o'clock is when we all wrap it up and close it down.
All wrap up. It's up at Hartman Arena, and it's the perfect time, as we mentioned before, for whether it's the hunting season, getting prepared for the springtime and the summertime. Now's the time to start looking at these really cool, from all over the board, either necessities or it's a nice little, things that you could enjoy in your life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We have again. We talked about it the other day, but we have a lot of different RVs. We have some motorhomes, trailers, fifth wheels, all shapes, sizes. Different price ranges. We have a lot of parts out there. We're doing a few giveaways. So
how cool!
People just need to come out and have some fun. I mean, that's what it's all about. Come out and see us, and we'll have fun together.
Absolutely. Our news director Rick Everett swinging in studio here as well. You got excited about which RVs? You're like, yes.
Well, I am excited about this. I am now. One reason everybody should be excited about it is real easy. It's warm in Hartman Arena.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Trust me.
That is a benefit right there. That is a benefit right there by itself.
Hey, now, if you had to put a guesstimate on just how many units are out there at Hartman Arena for people to take a look at, what would that number be in the ballpark of?
Roughly right around 50 or so.
And anything from small to the best of the best, right?
Yeah. I mean, we have small trailers as small as roughly around 20 feet long, and we have some fifth wheels that go up to 40 feet. We got a big used diesel motorhome out there that's 42 feet long.
Now, Wichita RV, you guys have been around forever, right?
Yes. We're going on over 25 years.
And this is how many years of doing this show?
This is our first year at this show.
So this is exciting stuff.
Yes, it is.
It's groundbreaking.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to being out there, plan to head on out probably tomorrow.
Okay.
Tomorrow or Sunday, because I have that option, because the show continues through Sunday at Hartman Arena.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've been hearing is you've been talking about special show pricing.
Yeah, absolutely. We've discounted all our units. Beginning of the year pricing for people to come out and see us, get great deals. We have special financing, different payment options, even delayed payments for 90 days. We've also taken additional up to $1,000 off, additionally on top of some of the units that we have out there off of the show pricing. So,
And interest rates still at record lows compared to if we were looking back just a few years.
Absolutely. We're seeing them, on average between 2 to 3% lower than what they were, just 6, 7, 8 years ago.
I have a few friends who have done business with you all out at Wichita RV, and they say the one thing that they liked in comparison to some of the other places that they had been is there's not that high pressure. You're okay with people just kind of looking around and getting a feel for things.
Absolutely. That's what we want. We want them to come out. We want them to feel comfortable. We want them to come out, have a fun time. We're there to answer questions and help as much as we can, but we want them to come out and make sure that they're making the right decision, because this is something that they do for fun.
Exactly.
It's not like they don't have to come out and buy an RV.
You don't want to be having to have them feel saddled with that buyer's remorse thing.
Exactly. It's completely different than almost anything else. It does relate to some of the other fun stuff, boats, ATVs, things like that. Because again, it's fun,
but it's disposable income.
Exactly.
So you want to be feeling good about it.
Exactly, and that's what we want. We want them to come out, feel comfortable. Again, we're just there to answer questions.
Now, one final question.
Yes, sir.
From the news guy.
From the news guy.
Is it okay for just looky-loos to come out? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Because I'm going to title myself right now when you see me.
Okay, so
I'm a looky-loo.
You should have a T-shirt that says looky-loo.
Yeah, I'm going to try to change that when it comes out there. So.
You try to be that looky-loo. You just
we were talking about the pressure. Now I'm going to put the pressure on you.
Bam!
You're different, though.
Well, that's been stated before. Okay, show hours again. It's today, tomorrow, and then Sunday's the final day of the Wichita RV show at Hartman Arena. What are the show hours?
The show hours, actually today we're going to open up a little early. We planned on opening up at noon, but we've actually pushed that forward. We're going to open up at 10 today just because some people missed out yesterday because of the weather. So today we'll be open from 10 to 9. Tomorrow we'll be open from 10 to 9, and then Sunday we'll be open from 10 to 5.
And today, our own Andy Hoosier, the voice of reason, is going to be out there at Wichita RV's show at Hartman Arena, and that's from, 3 to 6?
3 to 6. I'll be out there.
That's exciting in itself.
That's right. I'll be out there having fun. What's the popular models or the popular things that you've seen so far with people being kind of drawn to, asking more questions about maybe sales this time of the year? What's been kind of the popular thing for you guys around this time?
Again, we've talked about it a couple times before in the show as far as some of the trend going down to some of the smaller units, and we're seeing a lot of that. I mean, we're seeing a lot of people come in and look at our little 18 to 25 foot little tow behind trailers, and they seem to be kind of the popular item right now. So we're excited about that. And again, we have different models. We have different manufacturers out there. So we have a lot of choices for people to look at.
Oh, cool. Yeah. No, you have, but obviously you have the displays for everything out there for just about all your different types of products.
Absolutely.
Now, who are your manufacturers? You say you have a lot of different lines out there.
Some, just a couple I'll throw
like the RVers that are like really good RVers out there listening, the names that they would recognize are?
Yeah. Coachman, Forest River, Columbus, StarCraft.
Boy, StarCraft is they've been doing this forever.
Yes, they have. So is Coachman. I mean, Coachman just turned their 50th year anniversary about 3 years ago. So
they're the ones with the little Dalmatian dog, right?
And they've kind of changed, got away from the dog a little bit.
I'm showing my age, aren't I?
Yeah, but good quality units. That's one thing that we like to say about what we carry is it's stuff that they're units that are quality at a good price, and they're built to last.
And I can remember as a little kid, okay, now we're not going to put years on this, okay, but my aunt and uncle, they started off, now they ended up with the big Airstream at the end, but they started off with them and their 3 kids, so a family of 5, in a StarCraft pop-up tent camper.
Yeah.
In Minnesota.
Wow.
So it had a heat. It had a heater.
I hope so.
Not to mention, you brought this up before, but you realize what they're starting to work on, Rick?
What's this? Tell me.
Like the coolest thing that they need to have.
Oh, yeah.
A voice of reason RV?
Camouflage.
Well,
I should have known it.
Right there. See?
I should have known it.
See, the camouflage RV, that is going to be one of the coolest things ever.
Maybe you could tie in with Duck Dynasty dudes.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. Have them come out, get some beards going. And
Yeah, there we go. That's people out there. Hey, there we go. That's the RV you need right here.
Absolutely.
I love it. What other vendors do you have out there?
We have Bash Brothers is out there, Wichita Tractor's out there, Ravenscraft's out there, Comfort Select, Jams and Jellies. That's just to name a few, and they're excited also. They're ready for people to come out and talk to them after being kind of cooped up in the cold yesterday, and they're ready to come out and talk to the folks.
You've
and
got
answer
me
any
feeling
questions.
like I may not be able to wait until tomorrow. I may have to make 2 trips.
There you
Well,
go.
that's fine. I mean, come out.
One
I mean,
looky-loo and then one not-so-looky-loo.
Yeah.
One,
We'll have
that's
to
a
work on
looky-loo, and then a thinking-loo.
Yeah, see, there you go. There you go. Again, what's the price to get in? The tickets at the door and the hours that everybody can go see this.
Okay, it's $5 per person. First responders are free, and children 12 and under are free to get in. 10, we've changed it again, 10 to 9 today, 10 to 9 Saturday, and 10 to 5 on Sunday.
Wow, how cool. That's going to be great.
It's worth $5 to walk around somewhere warm.
Just to enjoy it. Yeah, go out and enjoy, and I mean, to see all the great stuff out there. It's really cool. I'm so excited you guys are up there at Hartman Arena, and as you mentioned, staying nice indoors and nice and warm.
Yeah, and I just want to throw one more thing out there.
Yeah.
To all of your listeners, we'd like to, if you guys want to come out and purchase an RV, come out and see me. We'll give you extra $500 off any unit that's out there. So.
Just for a KQAM listener.
Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely.
That's
So
kinda cool.
just come out, ask for me, and we'll be happy to do that for you.
Give his
So-
name 3 times now,
Yeah,
so
three
they don't
times.
forget.
Dale
right.
Fisher, Dale Fisher, Dale Fisher.
There you go. There you go.
It's stuck in your head
Yeah.
now. You can't get it out. That's right. Go there, ask up $500 off just by being a KQAM listener to mention that. That's
Make your best deal first, and then hit him with that.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly. We're excited to be here with you guys, and we're excited for the listeners, and we appreciate everybody. So.
Well, we really appreciate you working with us. We love being able to work with you guys. As I mentioned, I'm going to be broadcasting out there from 3 to 6. May have some fun giveaways for the station as well, and to be able to talk to you guys out in your element and see all the goodies out there. So we'll have some fun tonight.
We're excited. I'm happy and excited to see you out there.
Looking forward to it, Dale. Appreciate you swinging by again. Go have some fun today.
Thank you.
It'll be a good time, Rick. Always
Thank you,
fun.
sir. Thank
there we
you.
go.
Yeah, thank you.
I had to get a piece of this, man.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
fun
Gotta
stuff.
enjoy it. Is
Yeah.
it's always fun to be able to see the new stuff. And I mean, just the way we talked briefly about this last time was the new technology and the innovation, how things are crafted and formed and updated every year. I mean, the stuff you see in there may be different from a model you saw 2-3 years ago.
Absolutely, and it may be different from a model you saw 6 months ago. I mean, the technology in these things is advancing so quickly, and we're sitting around with our reps, and we were sitting around last night right before the show closed, and they're what can we do to make these better for your customers?
Sure.
So they are constantly evolving, and they're taking and we Wichita RV. Anytime a customer said, "Well, I really like to see this in one,"
Sure.
we jot it down and we send it to these guys, and a lot of times, next go around, It's there.
How cool.
Yeah.
They do really listen to those requests then.
Absolutely.
That's really cool. I love it. Dale, Wichita RV and Outdoor Show up at Hartman Arena starting it's been starting on Wednesday. It's going through today and all the way through Sunday. Again, we'll be out there broadcasting from 3 to 6 o'clock tonight. Look forward to seeing you out there tonight.
All right. Thank you, Andy. I appreciate it.
Always a good time. Wrapping up hour number 2 already. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason, wrapping up hour number 2. This show goes by way too fast. I have to say, the morning goes by too fast as you're starting off your day trying to drink the coffee, get ready, do your hair, whatever you do in the morning, driving to work, listening to the show, trying to figure out what the daily news is, and then before you know it, you're already sitting in the cubicle working, doing whatever you do, and the show's already over. It's hard to believe, but it goes by way too fast. 721-825-5721 Talk. Thanks again to Dale with Wichita RV and Outdoor Show. coming on the show talking about the show. We'll be out there again broadcasting live from 3 to 6. That'll be broadcast on both stations. I'm excited to go out there today. I love getting out of the studio once in a while and actually going doing something out in the community. So I'll be broadcasting out there again from 3 to 6 tonight. Stay tuned. Come by, check it out. I may have some goodies, some swag and stuff to give away, and we'll have some fun with it out at Hartman Arena. It's from 3 to 6 tonight, so stay tuned in. And we'll be broadcasting out there for those a couple hours. Coming up in hour number 3, we got Alan Cobb from Kansas Chamber of Commerce. He's going to be joining us, giving us the first week recap of the legislative session, along with the push on what we need to do as the state when we talk about some of that activism, when we talk about some of that engagement on what we should be focused on, what to work on, what to try to change, and what pressure to put onto our legislators. This is the time to do it. So we'll talk with Alan Cobb coming up in just a few minutes on that. Also, we'll have an open line to you. It is a free-for-all Friday, so whatever you want to talk about that may be political or even non-political, you're more than welcome to call in and chat about it as well, because I do want to hear from you. We've had some great calls today, and keep that rolling. To wrap up the conversation we had in this hour, the expansion of the state legislatures, obviously it's not going to happen anytime soon, and I don't think, again, if it was in the hands of the legislators that are currently there, I really don't think that they'd be in favor of it, because guess what? They'd be losing power. They'd be losing a voice a little bit, because they would have to be competing against more individuals to try and get legislation done. So would they be in favor of it? Probably not. So I don't know. I see benefits and negatives of it. We may have to bring that topic up again at a later time and get your thoughts on the expansion of more legislators in our government at the state level, shrinking the size of the districts and having a little bit more accountability. Would that be a good thing or a bad thing? That's up for us to decide. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is The Voice of Reason. Hour number 3 coming up in a minute. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Hi, good morning to you. Welcome into The Voice of Reason, hour number 3 of The Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. It's the day we look forward to, the first full week of 2018. I know that we are exhausted, but we made it through, baby. It's like Walking Dead, walking through the tunnel. The train, remember that in the train tunnel, what was that, season 4, season 5, and you're fighting off the zombies, and you're trying to camp out in there and trying to wait for the light at the end of it, and you're trying to work your way through. You know what? You finally made it, and we get to celebrate. It's a free-for-all Friday. Let's do it! Whatever's on your mind, bothering you, troubling you, making it happen. Whether we've talked about it, not talked about it, it's up to you today. You decide the topics. It's a free-for-all Friday on The Voice of Reason. Let's do it. All right. 721-8255-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, you can always shoot me a message all over social media on Facebook at the Voice of Reason page, the KQAM page, the Facebook live feed we have rolling right now. Also on Twitter at Hoosier Reason. You can always shoot me a message there as well. Let's get to our next guest. I'm really excited to have him back on the show. We've had him on a couple of times as we talk about the legislature, the first week of the legislative session, on what to fight for, what pressure to put on our legislators, and what we can do to increase growth of the private sector, of industry, of business at the state level. He's president of the Kansas Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Alan Cobb is on the line with us here. Alan, good morning to you, my friend.
Good morning, Andy. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
It's always an honor to be able to have you on. I love chatting with you. And happy 2018, by the way. I tell you what, 2017 went by fast and was an interesting year, to say the least. I'm hoping we can use some of that momentum from federal tax reform at the federal level to apply that towards what we're doing at the statewide level. Can we do something like that?
Boy, I don't know. I'd like to think it's possible. I think that the Kansas Supreme Court and how the legislature responds to their rulings make that a little difficult. But I do think you're going to see higher rates of economic growth at the national level, and that always then trickles down to states. You'll see higher rates of growth in Kansas. There's no question about it. The puzzle is, what can we do at the state level to make that even better? And obviously, if it was easy, we've had governors, so particularly, I think, give Governor Brownback some credit for focusing on the lack of growth in Kansas and trying to do something about it. It didn't. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. But I think we need to still focus on rates of economic growth. That solves an awful lot of problems, including school finance.
Exactly. What we seem to be in the state, for whatever reason, we seem to be on the doing the 180 from what the federal government's doing. When Governor Brownback did his tax reform in 2012 was the same time Barack Obama did the major tax increases at the federal level. Now we're doing tax increases at the federal level, and we're starting to try and raise taxes at the state level. We seem to be not utilizing the potential of growth and opportunity that we have because we're trying to do the opposite.
That's a great point. I hadn't thought about that. It is kind of the opposite. And I think we, the chamber and our members, we're in it for the long haul. I mean, I'm not going to be worried and start crying over what happened last year. We're going to look over the long term of how to start reducing rates and have more efficient tax system in Kansas at the state and local level. You got property taxes that certainly drive a lot of government spending in Kansas. It's primarily local, but we need to look at the state brackets and what's being taxed and how we're taxing it. Our state sales tax, sometimes business folks don't talk about that. I think they should. Businesses pay sales taxes, and our combined state and local sales tax are average of the locals, because we have local tax rates all over the board in Kansas. But if you add those together, average, we're ninth highest in the country, and that's not accounting for cost of living differences. And that's a competitive issue. Our top marginal rate in Kansas is higher than Massachusetts. Yes, that's a bit of a talking point, because you have to look at what levels of income are taxed and when do the brackets kick in, et cetera. But taxes remain a competitive issue that I hope more and more legislators take a harder and more critical look at.
Sure. And as you mentioned before, I mean, it's going to be in baby steps where we have to start working towards the right direction again, because we can't change what happened last session. I'm concerned, though, looking at the Kansas Policy Institute and some of the stuff that you guys have come out with, is that back in 2015, when we had the tax breaks for the LLCs, I know it's not a loophole because it wasn't a shenanigans they were getting away with, but it was the incentives to grow the businesses. 80% of new job growth was because of the LLCs. Now we're seeing an 18-year unemployment rate in the state of Kansas. I'm scared to death that by repealing all this and raising taxes business-wise and income-wise, that we're going to start seeing the lack of growth of new businesses in the state again. I don't want to see that happen.
I think that's a reasonable concern, and I think that the legislators who voted for the tax increases were not as concerned about that, and I think they should. I think they looked at the so-called budget hole, which was a bit of a myth, and thought, well, they just have to do this extreme action to raise it was $600 million in 1 year. So I don't care how many years you want to add it up, but if you raise taxes, it's not a 1 year deal unless you really think the legislature is going to repeal it the next year, which they're not going to this year. So let's just say over 2 years, it's a $1.2 billion tax increase with a state economy of around $150 billion. That's a lot. I mean, that's a big chunk of the state economy for just state government. Again, that doesn't include the federal or all of the local tax bites.
No, absolutely. Talk about your thoughts on the first week of the legislative session. Obviously, not a whole lot got done. A few bills were presented, a little bit of dialogue, kind of setting the stage for what's to come for this year. We also had the State of the State address from Governor Brownback that caused a lot of controversy on both sides of the aisle. But overall, for the first week, what do you think happened so far?
Well, it was uneventful other than the State of the State, and that was very eventful. And I'm puzzled at the governor's proposal. I mean, last year I think he held fairly strong and vetoed the tax increases, but then this year he wants to spend the tax increases. And I think he's been, I think, rightfully concerned about the role of the Supreme Court in legislative matters, but yet he seems to be giving them a pass. So that's the biggest thing, and how much the governor is going to actually engage the legislature, or is he just throwing us out? Which is my guess, is he's just throwing it out and let the legislature deal with it. I do have to quote, I always like clever comments and sense of humor from legislative body or legislators or political leaders. I've got to quote J.R. Clays, a Republican from Salina, who said, he tweeted this: the governor has waved the white flag of surrender from the dome, tossed every ally he had under the bus, then put the bus in reverse, then lit fire to the bus. Whether you agree with that or not, I think that's pretty clever, and I thought it's kind of funny. It's good to laugh every once in a while at the politics in Kansas.
Well, it is, and he makes a really good point, because everybody always hypes up how he's the least popular governor, which I don't believe, because I have supported a lot of what he does, but it did throw a wrench into the system, I thought, and either it was because I thought he was trying to make a deeper point by kind of giving them the pun of, you can have the cake and eat it too. Here's the money, and here's how to do it without raising taxes to help you in the midterm. But by the way, the comments that he made later in the speech saying, well, money's not going to solve it, and we need a constitutional amendment to fix this for later on down the road. I thought he was trying to do that underlying message, but his tweet the next day saying how we need to just comply with the Kansas Supreme Court kind of blew and shattered that theory. So you're right. I'm not sure where he was coming from there, and a lot of conservatives are very upset with him not taking a firm stance and continuing that fight.
And I think they should be upset, or let's get some clarification of where the governor is going to be. And look, we all know he was renominated for the cabinet, or not the cabinet position, but a Senate confirmed position, and I'm not sure how long that would take. So he's a little bit in limbo, and I understand that. But
sure,
it's to give him credit for having an interesting and substantive speech, whether we agreed with it or not. But I think this gets to an issue. I think it's important. The Supreme Court, their role in our public policy in Kansas, I think it's well outsized. I am a licensed attorney in Kansas. Our chamber legislative agenda, we include an item that we're going to support a constitutional amendment that clarifies that it's the legislators' role to fund schools, not the Supreme Court. And it's not just school finance and what the Supreme Court and the appellate courts are having opinions on. It's stuff like workers' comp,
sure,
and constitutional remedies. The Kansas Court of Appeals just threw out a case. This is a case I agree with, and the Central County and USD 259 had basically wanted the Kansas to have a completely new way to value stores, and how they the appraisal of them would have been a huge tax revenue boost for the state and for the county and for the school district. And the appellate court, to their credit, threw it out. And there's also a case pending for the Kansas Supreme Court that might do away with any of the liability caps and just say those are unconstitutional. So There's a lot of stuff. I know the Supreme Court in Kansas, some of the politics policy gets focused on, death penalty and school finance. There's a whole bunch of things that I think people should be concerned about with how the Supreme Court's going to rule.
It was already going to be difficult to try and figure out the funding formula for education, to either fight the Supreme Court or find a way to comply with it, to not have to raise taxes. And then along with the totally other issue with Medicaid expansion, this was going to be an already tough session. Do you think that the statements from Governor Brownback are going to make that more difficult, because now even the conservative side seems to be torn a little bit on how to address this?
I think probably it won't matter. I think that the Governor Brownback will be confirmed by the Senate, and I think the legislature, they're going to go home and listen to their constituents on all sides of all the issues, and I think it probably won't matter as much. I think the frustration with some of the Republicans was that they thought, well, at least let's not, maybe he could help us by solving some of these difficult issues, and I think he made it a little bit more difficult, but probably in the long run it probably won't matter.
Sure. We're talking with Alan Cobb with the Kansas Chamber of Commerce. A few minutes left with you. But what should we put pressure on now? What should we really focus on to hold our elected officials accountable for? Is it to try and do a tax repeal? Is that too much for this year? Should we try and coast through this year just without, saying it's successful without a tax increase this year, and work towards the elections at the end of the year? What should we be really putting pressure on them to do or not to do for this session?
I think there's probably three things. One is have your legislators support a constitutional amendment, a real constitutional amendment that's substantive and good, that still, make sure that we're going to fund schools, but yet the Supreme Court is taken out of it. Two is just no new taxes. We're not going to cut taxes this year. Just don't raise them because of these other spending priorities. Three is please, let's start taking a harder look and critical look at what we are spending on, what we're spending money on. Are we really doing it the most efficient way? I think there's some legitimate concerns about some cuts that have been made, but yet I think they've been willy-nilly, and maybe we're cutting the wrong things and increasing spending on the other thing, on things that maybe aren't efficient. I guess the fourth thing would be, let's start taking a look at those August and November elections, and can we find the right candidates and support the right candidates, or they're get Kansas back on a better track.
Sure. Last question before we let you go, but if Governor Brownback does step down and move up to the federal level for the ambassadorship, Lieutenant Governor Collier going to be stepping in and doing that role possibly during the legislative session. If that's the case, what's your gauge on him when it comes to some of these issues? If we try to increase spending on education, a lot of people saying that maybe that speech from the State of the State was more Lieutenant Governor Collier's mindset as opposed to Governor Brownback, or even the expansion of Medicaid. I mean, he crafted CanCare, he made it privatized, it's his baby, and advocates wanting to expand that program. What do you think he would do if that gets to his table?
I'm not sure. I know that Jeff Collier is a thoughtful, deliberative guy who has the best interests of the state in mind. There's no question about it. I think increasing funding for K-12 that's not necessarily a problem. In fact, maybe there's some things that we should do. It's like, who gets to decide that, though? It's 165 members of the legislature that should be deciding, not the 7 members of the Kansas Supreme Court.
Sure.
And I think that how he's led the CanCare effort, which has reduced growth in Medicaid, I think is a positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think he's been on record saying he doesn't support Medicaid expansion, but I'm not 100% sure. But I think we'll have an honest broker and a person that we can all talk to, and whose best interest, the best interest of the state will be in his mind.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he does, because I know he's running for governor as well. So to see him lead a little bit if Governor Brownback does step down is going to be very exciting to watch over the session if that ends up happening. Alan Cobb with the Kansas Chamber of Commerce. It's an honor to get you on the show, my friend. I love chatting with you.
Anytime.
We got to get you back on again soon.
Anytime, Andy. Thank you.
Hey, always a pleasure there. Let's take one break. We'll wrap up the show. I can't believe it. It's already getting ready to wrap up. We'll open up lines to you. It's a free-for-all Friday. Whatever on your mind, we'll talk about it next. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker KQAM.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker KQAM. Happy Friday morning to you. It's a pleasure to have you along. Thanks again to Alan Cobb with the Kansas Chamber of Commerce joining us in that last segment, talking about what we can do. Look, we're all about reasonableism. We're all about common sense. We're all about taking things in stages and baby steps on what we can rationally, reasonably do. We're not about, sometimes we're about overturning the table, starting fresh and wanting to clean the slate. That's nice. Doesn't always happen. That's why we voted for Donald Trump, to try and go in, overturn the table, start from a fresh slate, and start directing things back in the right way, which is good to do sometimes, but you can see how it's slow and hard that process is to actually make happen. So our goal at the statewide level, with how important our legislative session is, with how important our state government is to do this in baby steps. Are we going to get our tax rates repealed and lowered again this session? No. I would love to see that. I would do anything I could to make that happen. I would do anything to try to encourage to make that happen, but it's not going to happen. We are too far gone in the wrong direction right now to think about that. In time, we have the possibility to do so. We can start moving in that direction. We can start making it better again. We can start lowering our taxes again and going to a fair tax where we only have sales tax. Look, that 6-7%, whatever we have on sales tax right now for food, is outrageous. But it would be more appropriate if we had zero income tax, and then we could go and buy our food without any income tax, and then we could afford it. There's a big difference there. Or getting rid of the sales tax and only doing income tax and doing doing the flat tax, whatever we end up doing. But we need to do something. And right now, with over 50% of the tax revenue coming into the state from sales tax, it would be easier to do a fair tax through sales tax income as opposed to income taxes. And we could start moving in that direction. But it's not going to happen this session. It's not going to happen this year. It's not going to happen in the next 2 years or 3 years. It's going to take some time. We're going to have to wean ourselves off it. This year, in my opinion, what we need to focus on in our legislature is to hold them accountable for what they want to do, is to not allow any more tax increases, is to not allow the expansion of Medicaid, is to not allow additional funding for the education system. This session should be about fixing the education system and creating the constitutional amendment, is to creating the line drawn in the sand from the legislature, fighting the Supreme Court, and what we're going to do to make sure this never happens again. That should be the goal for this session. Let's create that constitutional amendment. Let's draw that line in the sand. Let's throw ourselves into a constitutional quote-unquote crisis, not allow the school to shut down because they're not going to shut down, but for us to sit down and rationally figure out how we're going to move forward, because 12 years of litigation is not beneficial to the state. 12 years, 10 years of litigation and lawsuits against the people saying that we deserve more of your money for public education is not the way to have a sustainable government. And the only way to make a sustainable government is to allow things to run efficiently and smoothly from all three branches of government. Let's figure out where that line's going to be drawn from here on out. That should be the focus. Medicaid expansion, they want to throw that in there. It's not going to happen. I don't want it to happen, and we need to put that pressure on them. But if we can go out of this session with a defined list of what's going to be okay for education from here on out, we don't raise any more taxes, then we can focus on the elections at the end of the year. Then we can focus on getting some midterm, some primary elections to figure out which individuals, Democrats and Republicans, that we need to replace. We need to get some new individuals in and then start voting on the general election. So that way next year, instead of even having to have this battle again, we can actually make it an appropriate, successful, productive session by not having to talk about raising taxes for a third year in a row. Bottom of the hour news. We'll shift gears a little bit, open up lines to you when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Right on! Let's do it! Rock that world! Rock that world!
Give him a call at 721-TALK.
Sometimes you just run across a news story that you say, I don't know whether I want to go down this road or not, but sometimes you just have to. Sometimes you just have to bring it up. Welcome into The Voice of Reason. Wrapping up the show today, 316-721-8255, 721-TALK. If you want to join in, it's open lines to you. Anything you want to discuss, you're more than welcome to do so. I found a story, and it was floating around on the New York Post, and it was posted apparently on Drudge Report as well. And now this is coming from someone who had attacked viciously Donald Trump for shaming women, name-calling women, so on and so forth, for things that he had said in the past. And this would be Megyn Kelly. Now, according to the New York Post, she was on a TV show, and she revealed on her Today Show, she revealed that she enjoyed, and many women enjoy. Now, I would never do this. I don't know how a guy could do this or anybody, but apparently some can. Some women apparently enjoy it. So all women, I am calling on you to give me your input on this. But she said that many women enjoy fat shaming in order for them to hold themselves accountable to get in shape. Now, first off, let's look at it from the political standpoint. First off, this is a woman who attacked Donald Trump for name-calling women and for shaming women and for attacking women for their looks or for whatever, because he had made comments in the past from different models or actresses or whoever about what they look like. And she attacked him viciously for that. Now, according to the New York Post on Thursday, Kelly revealed on her Today Show that while she was studying at Albany Law School in the 1990s, she asked her stepfather to fat shame her whenever she wanted to eat. Quote, some of us want to be shamed. When I was in law school, I was gaining weight. I said to my stepfather, if you see me walk into that kitchen one more time, you say, where are you going, fat blankety blank? And it worked. She was interviewing Fit Mom, one of the Fit Moms, 37-year-old mom blogger, talking about ways to stay in shape and stay fit as a mom, and said that she enjoyed being fat shamed. That would never cross my mind to do at all. But apparently some women like that. So I ask you, women, 721-8255, 721-TALK, do you enjoy being fat shamed? Because that's your encouragement. Now, I will say that sometimes criticism is good. I mean, I enjoy criticism to some degree. Not like you're an idiot and blah, 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 blah. You just kind of black that out. But I do enjoy criticism at times as well, and saying what you did was stupid and it was not the right way. My on-air performance, I always try and judge and grade how I do on the air, my dialogue, my ands and ums and hesitations, or me going off topic sometimes, or how I present a case. And I always analyze that to see if I can do better, because I want to do the best that I can at my performance in my dialogue and getting the information out to you, the listener, on a daily basis. I always try and, whether you're in career, no matter what your career is, you always want to take it to the next level and make it better. So you always want that constructive criticism. But is fat shaming a constructive criticism? I don't know if that necessarily is. I've had people sit down and be like, Andy, your show, we need to talk about that. Other times, Andy, hey, why'd they put you on Facebook Live? You got that face for radio. You kind of like a glow-in-the-dark beach ball or something. And I'll take that as a constructive criticism, I guess. I don't know if there's anything I do about it other than get a tan, so I don't know. Fat shaming, is that something that you'd be advocating for? And women, I want to hear from you on this. Would you be okay with a guy fat shaming you in order to try and hold you accountable to get into shape? 721-8255, 721-TALK. Let's go to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, Andy. It's Pam.
Good morning, Pam. How are you today?
Oh, and I'm always happy to give an opinion on something like this.
Well, okay, what's your take? Would you be okay? Megyn Kelly saying that she wanted to be fat shamed to hold herself in control of her weight. Is that something that women like?
Well, for one thing, that tells me Megyn Kelly has zero willpower. If she needs someone to tell her she's a fat blankety blank, and then the next day she's going to sue the guy for calling her a fat blankety blank.
Sure.
So, women get so neurotic. I'm sorry.
I'm glad you said it, because I'm not going to say that on the radio.
I can say these things, because I am one, and I've been around women all my life, and it just makes me nuts, these games that women seem to have to play. Here where women get to be the ones to decide if you're sex discriminating against them.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to Mike Gallagher the other day, and this lady had called up and said, look at the way women dress, and men aren't supposed to, when your top
sure.
is halfway down to your waist,
sure.
and everything is showing, men aren't supposed to look. Well, Mike Gallagher said that it's not the men's fault. That it's not the women's fault for dressing that way.
Right.
And I said, it certainly is.
Well, and that's the thing, and that's an interesting conversation, because I saw something on social media to that same accord, to where, guys, because in this whole world now of sexual harassment and of guys coming on to women when they shouldn't be and hitting on them or whatever, or affairs that go on, that, the guys need to learn to control themselves, and that's true. Guys need to learn to control themselves, because they shouldn't be sexual harassing or trying to push the envelope when the women doesn't want to. And guys need to have that control. At the same time, we need to hold ourselves to that standard, because it is biological for guys to be attracted to women, especially if they're somewhat revealing, or they're wearing tight clothes, or the blouse is halfway down. So it is biological to say, it's still not okay to act on something like that. But if you're walking in public and you're not dressed appropriately and guys are staring at you, then you cannot turn around and say that we blame guys for staring at me because they're sexually harassing me by staring at me and fantasizing about me. We got to have it on both sides here.
Right. Yeah. If I want a man to be responsible, I'm going to try to dress appropriately. I mean, some guys you could wear a gunny sack. I understand that. But, we got to give you guys a little help.
It goes both ways. Yeah, it's not solely on the guy to say, "Oh, look at the girl saying, look at everything I got, guys, but don't you touch it, don't you even think about it." And the guys are saying, "What are we supposed to do here?"
Right. Well, and we shouldn't dress like we're going to work at the girly bar and expect to have respect,
Exactly.
from men. And I don't understand. I mean,
if
guys,
girls,
this fat shaming thing just blows my mind.
I don't get it. And if it was coming from somebody else, maybe we'd have a different approach to this and be like, okay, maybe this is, some way to hold your, have your accountability buddy, which everybody needs for other things. And I get that, but to fat shame and say, "Oh, you're a fat blankety blankety blank, and why aren't you getting in the gym?" And, to look at them jelly rolls and, that sort of thing, that doesn't, I don't know. Maybe that helps some people. I don't know if that would necessarily help a lot of women.
But to me, I think that's something you better keep private because I'd be afraid to do that. If someone asked me to do that, I'd think, "Oh, boy, they must think I have money and they're going to sue me tomorrow."
Exactly.
After I do this. That's just the way people have become.
That's very true.
Instead of a job, you sue,
You sue somebody and you get that settlement.
Yeah, and I don't think that women should be the ones that get to pick if they've been sexually harassed.
Sure.
If we're going to have all this sexual harassment stuff, let's lay down some rules.
Sure. No, exactly.
So everybody knows what the rules are.
Sure. That's a great point.
Hey, if your skirt is 18 inches above your knee, well, guess what?
Yeah.
Somebody ought to say something.
Somebody ought to say something. I agree. Pam, I love it. I appreciate it. I want to get to another call here, but you're right. I don't know about the fat shaming aspect to this, but you bring up a really good point with that. And it goes both ways with the guy or the gal. I just got a message on Facebook from Laura. What about the guy is dressing provocatively sexual harassment towards men? If guys, look, guys can wear the tight jeans, and apparently girls like that as well. And if they're fantasizing or coming on to the guy because they look really nice, is that the same thing? Do we have a double standard there? And it's very interesting to see, do we have one standard or another? Because biologically we're supposed to be attracted to the other sex. That's just the way that humans work, and it goes both ways. Now, do guys need to act appropriately and act responsibly? Yes. At the same time, we can't say that by looking at them and by catching their eye is sexual harassment and quote unquote rape because you dress provocatively and you said, "Well, I can do whatever I want to, so don't look at me that way," because it makes no sense to me. Pam, I love it. Let's go back to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
It's Wallace.
Wallace, what's going on, sir?
Well, first of all, I have to apologize to you because I cheated on you with another radio host yesterday.
What? I was going to say, you know what, Wallace? I brought up your topic that you've been calling in about, and I was certain that you were going to call in and talk, and you never even called. So I knew that you went somewhere else, and how dare you?
I tell you, you would have been, you can only imagine what I said. And I essentially got, the way the call ended up is he called me a racist, and I called him a fool.
Okay, explain. No, was this a Wichita radio show? Do describe this a little bit.
No, it was a local Salina radio show.
Okay.
And the host, typically, he and I agree a lot on most issues. And, this was discussing what, that Trump had kind of looked like he was reversing course and was willing to give us amnesty in exchange for, these other foolish things, let's end the visa lottery, things that he can't promise that will ever stay in place.
Sure.
So, I made the point that I'm against giving up permanent amnesty for temporary border security. That's naive. It's foolish. And so anyway, the guy calls me a racist, just flat out calls me a racist. And I said, Jerry, I'm going to give you the opportunity to apologize before I make a fool out of you. And he goes, "Oh, I don't remember what he said." So I go, "Jerry, what race? You called me a racist, which means I'm against a race of people. So what race is illegal? From what country, what ethnicity is illegal?"
What was the response?
Well, he goes, "Well, I heard you bash Mexicans." I said, "I've never bashed Mexicans unless they're here illegally." I said, "I don't care if you're from Russia, from China, where you're from. Illegal is illegal, and I'm against it 100%. His point was, He wants to stop trying to go for the Hail Mary and get everything. And he goes, maybe we just need to go for first downs and move the ball down the field. And my point was, we tried that with Reagan amnesty. We had border security. We had all those things, worker verification. We got 100% of the amnesty and 20 million more illegals.
Well, and that's still a great analogy, and I can see moving the ball down at first downs at a time instead of going for the Hail Mary. I understand that, but at the same time, what are we going to compromise and give up? And some other hosts are already beginning to talk about what compromise that we have to do because we're not going to get everything we want to, so we have to learn to take what we can. And I get all of that because that is the discussion that we always end up coming to. But at what point, what line is going to be drawn and said, you promised that we would not allow amnesty to be in the question. So whatever else we compromise, whatever else we end up doing, amnesty cannot be one of those. In the amnesty of DACA recipients, who you mentioned vehemently is one of the main things you were going to do. Should that be on that compromise table? I don't think it should be, no matter what else we end up compromising later on down the road.
Well, and look, it all comes down to this. We tried compromise. We tried. Reagan gave us amnesty,
sure,
and he also gave us 20 million more illegals. Because what he's proven in the last 3 decades is neither Republican or Democrat presidents or those Congresses will ever keep the border secure.
Sure.
Trump cannot make the next president keep the border secure. Trump can't make the next Congress not reverse any laws that are passed with this Congress. Nothing is permanent except the amnesty.
But not to mention that we have a Republican majority in both chambers. Why are we talking about the first thing before we even begin the writing of the legislation and we're just in the discussion stages? We're already talking about let's take it a little bit that we can and just compromise everything because we can only get a smidgen. Right now we should be aiming for the goal line and then see where we end up at the end of it. But we're already starting off shooting ourselves in the foot, thinking that with the Republican majority and a Republican presidency, that we have to compromise everything that our goal intended to be.
Why is it Republicans claim to be the law and order party, but we're the only ones apparently that are going to do amnesty twice?
Right.
I mean, it's only us. But, I just wanted to apologize for that. But the fat shaming thing, where Pam was wrong, is she can't make those comments just because she's physically a woman. I may identify as and
well, there you go.
Therefore, I get to make the comments, but it's also why I never go to the doctor because I don't like to be fat shamed. I take the mirrors out of my house because that's kind of self-defeating. And, it's one of these things. I had this discussion yesterday, and I won't say with who because I don't ever want to have a file put on me, but this gal actually admitted that, women need to stop dressing in a way that's going to solicit a response that they don't want.
Well, and there's the thing. If you want to dress like you're easy, then you're going to get the response that you're easy. And then why are you complaining that everybody thinks that you're easy? It goes both ways. Should guys control themselves? Absolutely. But if you dress like the way that, hey, you know what, I really don't care and I'm a free spirit and I'm going to do anything that comes my way, then that's how you're going to be approached. And if you don't like that, then that goes on the standards of both ends.
Yeah. If a woman can dress professionally, but still in a way that accentuates, her beauty.
Sure.
And she doesn't have to wear, a shorty short and a blouse that's unbuttoned out the front, because that's gonna, it's gonna solicit, some that are of, weaker continent, or I think that's the word. But, you're just going to get some negative, pushback.
Exactly.
But, if a woman can dress nice and still, personally, I think a woman who's dressed professionally, and I'm not talking like stuffy, but just professionally.
Sure.
And it exudes confidence. The word you never hear much anymore is regal. I look at the First Lady, she's very regal.
Sure. No, I completely agree.
That is sexy to me, is a pretty woman who has confidence and is regal and is just presents herself. That's sexy. That's a lot more attractive than slutty.
I agree. Wallace, I appreciate it, my friend. Got to take a break and wrap up the show, but you're absolutely right. I'm right there with you. I mean, my wife is very strong-willed, and that's what attracts me to her, is that she's professional. She's, like you mentioned, regal. She's professional. She's strong-willed. She's confident. And on both ends, guys and gals, that's attractive to the opposite sex. But trying to dress easy because you feel comfortable in that, maybe, or because you want the response, and at the same time criticize the response because biologically that's how we're wired, just doesn't make any sense. So fat shaming, though, I don't even know where to go from that, and it sounds like she's kind of one on her own on that one. One more break, wrapping up the show today. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Back into The Voice of Reason, wrapping up the show today. It goes by way too fast. Love all the phone calls. Love the discussion. We'll have a little bit more fun with that at a later time again. But we got to remind you, as you're starting off your day, now that you've kind of woken up and getting set for the day, planning out your weekend, planning out what you're going to do today, it's time for you to head up north a little bit for the Inman Harvest Cafe. It's Fried Chicken Friday, as it usually is. Great chicken, fresh homemade breading. They're getting everything underway. The big buffet from 11 to 1. The major buffet from 5 to 8 o'clock tonight. The free slice of pie. Katie's on the line with us as she is already getting everything prepared for you. I'm sure it smells heavenly in there, Katie.
It does. Happy Fried Chicken Friday. Yeah, we're getting it going. He's stirring the coder as we speak. I'm watching him stir.
It sounds so beautiful.
And I just boiled over the potatoes, so it's a good day.
Well, and you guys said, I mean, with how many potatoes you go through on a Friday is insane, just with how many that you cook and get prepared for everything. So I can only imagine how delicious that is.
It's a lot of pots and pans, and it's a lot of stirring, and it's a lot of everything. But you know what? It's a lot better than when you go to a place and, you know, they set the food down in front of you and, like, it tastes good. You know, it tastes good. But you can also tell that they just put it in the microwave.
Sure.
You know.
Sure.
Or they have these things that you just slide. Well, they have, like, oven ones, and then they also have, like, boil and bag kind of things, too. So, I mean, there's lots of choices. So we're always really excited when people choose our place because, you know, we stir.
Well, exactly. You make it all yourself. You make it all happen, and that's why it's made with the love and the taste, and it's so delicious.
Right.
And today you have not only the fried chicken, but you have the. I'm still thinking about the cheese enchiladas you said you were going to be making today.
We're gonna have cheese enchiladas. I've got the sauce already made, and then I'm putting the cheese in there, and you know they're pretty fast to put in the oven and just melt that cheese and kind of and it's a goopy. So then we're also having the chicken and wild rice casserole, and I'm excited about that. That's one of my favorites, but it does not have cheese. So you could potentially put your enchilada on top of your chicken and wild rice
just
casserole
mix the two
and
together.
just make Then the other thing that we're going to have is a Salisbury steak with the grilled mushrooms and onions, and then the brown gravy sauce on top that is made with our homemade beef broth. So that also doesn't have cheese, shockingly. There's very little. We have to put extra cheese in the cheese enchiladas just to make up for the lack of cheese and everything else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, it's a perfect way to warm yourself up because it's going to be a cold day today. So all of that around is just a nice, hearty, warm meal. But along with that, we got to remind everybody of the free slice of pie for the buffet tonight from 5 to 8 o'clock. What do you have on the lineup for the buffet tonight?
Okay, so the pies are going to be coconut, strawberry rhubarb, peanut butter, sour cream raisin, custard, and banana split. And then we're also experimenting with a new one that's called chocolate chip cookie dough pie. So it'll have little bits of chocolate chip cookie dough in it. That's kind of like the ice cream, you know, chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream. Only this isn't a pie. So
I
yummy.
love it. Oh, it's going to be delicious. There's no way that you can walk out there without having to be rolled out, pretty much.
I know. Well, wheelbarrow rental is extra. So.
That is an additional charge, but it is available for you. That's right. I love it. Inman Harvest Cafe. I know you guys are busy. Keep on cooking. I know everybody's going to be showing up here soon. It's Fried Chicken Friday. Have a great time. 620-585-6925 or 112 South Main Street in downtown Inman. Katie, enjoy it. We'll talk to you again next Friday.
All right, thanks. We'll talk to you then.
I love it. Always a great time there with the Inman Harvest Cafe. Appreciate them partnering up with us here on The Voice of Reason. That's it for the day. It's a Friday. Enjoy the weekend. Hopefully it gets a little bit warmer than what it is right now. We'll be back on Monday to kick it off all over again. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM. Have a great weekend, everybody.